Hello and welcome to another MovieBoozer.com virtual pubcast. I'm your host, Ken Ekman, and I'm joined by Hawk Ripjaw
Hello.
and Bill Leon.
Yes, sir.
And today we've got a lot of movies to talk about because we've been gone a couple of weeks. We're going to go ahead and lead off, though, with a movie that has kind of been making headlines and not necessarily for the right reasons. Before we get into Show Dogs, Hawk and I kind of have this thing that we've had going where bad talking dog movies are kind of a thing we watch now.
Yeah. It's the annual thing.
Yeah, I mean, it's at least 1 week of our January shit movie month is devoted to talking animal movies.
The way you described that was like, I went to the store to get some eggs. The next thing I know, I'm in Scientology.
Exactly. You know what? That's more meaningful than you might think. But so Show Dogs is the latest family buddy cop dog movie that is directed by Raja Gosnell, who is the filmmaker behind such luminary films as Beverly Hills Chihuahua. Yeah, I almost said Beverly Hills Ninja for a moment there.
Both the Smurfs movies I know he worked on.
Yep.
Yeah.
He did something on Home Alone, right? Was he like
Home Alone 3?
No.
He edited the first two.
Yeah. He was an editor on Home Alone.
But he also directed Big Mama's House, Never Been Kissed, both Scooby-Doo movies. He's, you know, he directs schlock, basically.
Big Mama's House. He's worked with Paul Giamatti, so
yeah. Well, there you go. That's
instant director cred. Has Martin Scorsese worked with Paul Giamatti?
I don't think he has.
Exactly. Watch, he fucking has, and I forgot.
Yeah.
And by the way, as an editor, he edited. Listen to this: Popeye, Teen Wolf 2. Pretty Woman.
Okay, that's weird.
Some pretty big movies, but also some pretty garbage movies. So anyway, this movie, Show Dogs, we should just jump into some controversy just to get it out of the way because that's what's been making the news.
Well, let's talk about the plot first, so we have some context, and also.
It's a plot. Is there one?
I mean, the plot. We could probably get the entire plot out in one breath.
Oh yeah. Well, go ahead. See if you can do it.
All right. Okay. A talking dog played by Ludacris and an FBI agent played by Will Arnett have to team up to infiltrate a dog show and save a panda from being taken by arms dealers and fur traders. There
we go. Yep. There's your breath.
And I still made it sound way cooler than it actually is.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I do want to say that of all the talking dog movies we've found, I think you'll agree with me, Hawk, that this doesn't hold a candle to the works of Robert Vince.
This is probably the worst one that I've seen.
And that includes some of the really garbage ones that were cheap cash-ins that
like Russell Madness and Space. Wait, was Space Buddies the good one? No, Treasure Buddies was the good one.
Spooky Buddies was the good one.
Yes, Spooky Buddies was the good one.
What the fuck, you guys?
and
okay, so
Pupstar Better Together was a lot of fun.
Yeah. And then Pupstar World Tour comes out later this year.
Oh, it's out now, man.
Oh shit!
Yeah, we got to get on it. Actually,
we should. For context, if you go to the site and you look for Hawk and Ken Survive, you'll find the little podcast which we discussed the movies that we watched during that Talking Dog Week.
Yes,
and so with Show Dogs, basically this dog, this police dog has to masquerade as a dog in a major Las Vegas dog show in order to uncover a animal smuggling ring. And he teams up with Will Arnett, an FBI agent. And man, Will Arnett is just masterful at being the best part of a horrible movie.
He really is.
And in this movie, the part he plays is essentially the the cop who is implausibly stupid.
Yes.
There are sequences in this film where he's supposed to be undercover that he's literally saying things like, "So, does anyone know where I can buy a panda?"
Yes, and then of course the bad guy buys it at first.
Yeah.
He's like, "Ooh, it's the classic Raja Gosnell villain, just the like an ugly little man with his scheming and ooh,
Yeah, and
like it's like that's in almost all of his movies. I swear to God.
And like all of these talking dog movies typically are, the CG with the dogs is just really creepy looking, and it just doesn't work.
The dogs either look like Scooby-Doo or they try to dub the voice the lines of the voice actor over the dog barking.
Yeah, and one thing I mentioned in in the review that Hawk and I actually did jointly together is that this panda cub who the dog is trying to find is really the animation just really is weird to the point where I described the way the panda moves and looks as like a combination between an Ewok and the Snuggle Bear.
Yeah, it's almost the panda more than anything else kind of sticks out like an overlaid graphic on the screen.
Yeah, exactly. It's something about the face too. It feels so fake and strange. And with that, there's a lot of boobery in this movie. A lot of just physical comedy that is confusing and stupid. Random shot of dogs drinking out of dog bowls in the shape of toilets because, toilet humor.
I thought you were going to say dog butts.
Oh, yeah, there's plenty of dog butt jokes. And, in fact, I'm glad you mentioned that because that gives me a great segue into the controversy behind this film.
The dog butt's a great segue.
Oh, yeah.
You'll see.
So, dog balls feature in this as a major plot point.
Isn't this a kids movie?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So here's the scoop. Actually, quite realistically, because in dog shows, one of the most unusual things that you'll see in a dog show is when judging the dog. One of the last things they do is grab a hold of the dog's genitals and feel around.
Right.
And that's done basically because in evaluating the dog's usefulness as a show dog, the dog has to be of a breeding type, and it has to. So if the dog's missing a nut or something, if something's gone wrong down there, they have to check. And this movie deals with that, which for a PG-rated movie was kind of a daring move, I thought. But the way they deal with it, it turns out, may trigger some people in a really weird way. Now, I'm not going to talk about that yet. I'm just going to explain the procedure that how the scene breaks down. So the police dog has a problem with people touching its balls because no one wants to have some rando just grab them from behind like that. And the person who's training him to be a show dog, the Papillon dog, tells him that he's got to get used to that because that's what's going to happen during this. And he suggests to him very calmly, in order to make it through this, you need to take yourself to a happy place. You need to send yourself to a happy place and get yourself.
At least they explain that, unlike the Cat in the Hat movie where he just gets hit in the nuts and then it transitions this weird fucking swing scene.
Well, Bill,
the avant-gardeness of the Cat in the Hat scene, I think, is superior to what happens in Show Dog.
And so when the moment finally arrives that the dog has to have its nuts touched by a random stranger, he puts his mindset in this happy place where he's not thinking about what's going on. He's thinking about something else. And so a couple days after this happened, that made the news because someone suggested that that's actually kind of fucked up. Have you thought about this at all, Bill? Like,
right,
why this is kind of fucked up?
Oh yeah. basically just like grin and bear molestation.
Exactly. It was suggested that this movie could be potentially used. This scene in the movie could be potentially used by a pedophile to groom children,
or just that children that with internalizing so much they'll see that happen in the movie and realize that it's okay.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah, and
because I think the grooming in the article is referring to what pedophiles actually do is they tell the children to grin and bear it, like you said.
Right,
but,
to think of something else while this happens, because it's going to happen.
And so when this first happened, the studio released a statement with a kind of a non-apology saying, "Oh, we're sorry that some of you read differently into a moment of intended comedy," which was
so Channel Awesome wrote it for him.
Yeah, that's
right.
Yeah.
Yes, that's what Channel Awesome does now. Is they
Mike Misha
freelance non-apologies.
On my side note, Nostalgia Critic reviewed The Boss Baby last week, and people were like just putting the Boss Baby's picture next to Mike Machad's.
Of course
they would.
So that happened, and then after that, now by today, the studio is like, okay, so a bunch of theaters have already dropped the movie, so the studio is re-editing it to kind of diminish and or completely delete that element of the plot, which first of all is funny because the movie made $6 million this weekend, and probably all of that and then some will just pay for the reshoots and redistribution. Or not reshoots, but re-edits and redistribution.
Not to mention how pivotal that scene is in the movie's plot, in that re-editing is going to require a lot of changes.
Yes.
And I just don't get how they're going to make it work within that context.
They'll probably have some kind of the reason that you're mentioning that is because of the revelation that Max has, which is unrelated to the genital touching, but his happy place is the realization that he really likes his new partner. Right.
Exactly. Yeah, it's just one of those unfortunate little things, and this is a movie that this is a movie that has some serious problems with it, and it's here's the thing. It's not a good movie to begin with, and so it's not like this movie is going to be seen by many people anyway.
In my theater, there was almost no laughter from anyone.
Yeah,
and it was a full theater. I got the very last seat that was available.
Jesus.
Mm. So, with that said, was there anything in this movie that you found funny?
I found two things funny, and the third one I can't remember. The first thing that I found that I actually laughed out loud at was that revelation scene from Max. So his happy place ends up being this psychedelic 3D tunnel of statues of liberty and American flags and dog treats just flying around until confetti explodes into a heart shape, and Max and Will Arnett they replicate the climactic dance sequence from Dirty Dancing.
What?
Yeah, honestly, it was almost a Tim and Eric moment, really.
Yeah, the dog like picks up Will Arnett and spins him around on his hands like it was like a CG, is it Scooby-Doo CG dog, but still.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
surprisingly inspired visually.
But because of that, though, but because of the fact that they have to remove that's removing one of the things that we actually laughed at. And here's the thing: neither of us had any inkling that that whole molestation aspect was. Neither of us picked up on that at first. We didn't.
Yeah, I did not read that at all like that.
But it's one of those things where once you hear it, you completely understand how someone might get that interpretation.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's not. It's not because sometimes there are those people who get triggered about things, and your first thought is, you're really overreacting. But when I think about it, all I can think of is, no, they need. This is problematic. This is just wrong.
Yeah.
And
the other thing I laughed at is the very end. In the climax in this hangar where the bad guys are going to make off with these exotic animals, somebody lets the tiger out of his cage, literally, and the bad guy's flying away, thinks he's gotten away, ha ha ha, and it shows it's like, oh, the tiger is in the plane with him, and he kind of glances back and glances back forward, not even really notice. It's like, hey, how you doing? Which I thought was I always, for some reason, I've always found that joke kind of funny, where the bad guy like sees something dangerous behind him and just lightly acknowledges it without really realizing what it is.
Yeah,
and I
the
think
double take kind of joke.
Kind of, where he's like, he actually acknowledges the tiger's like, hey, how's it going? And without really noticing that in this cramped twin engine airplane, there's a tiger, and that doesn't register right away for him. For some reason, I thought that the escalation of that joke was so fucking dumb that I had to laugh at it.
When he realizes it's a tiger, does he let out like a girly scream?
Yeah.
Oh, God.
And the tiger's like, fasten your seatbelt or something like that.
Yeah.
The tiger was weird. Later on in the very end, he's like ziplining in Vegas, and he's like, this really is the life of Pi, or something like that.
What?
And yeah, it was like a super low effort joke.
Really bottom of the rung. Yeah. But
who's making Life of Pi references in 2018?
Yeah.
Not to mention, like, who that's seen Show Dogs has seen Life of Pi besides like, film critics.
Some little kid is like, oh, that's my favorite.
Like, oh, I understand that reference, Mom.
Yeah. Said no one. Yeah, so needless to say, this movie was a hot mess, and it's too bad that, because it's been proven, Robert Vince proved that you can make a shitty talking animal movie that's kind of entertaining.
Something that's very, very strange that I noticed, and this has been bugging me for days.
Okay.
Only in a couple of Robert Vince movies do the humans actually acknowledge that the animals can talk.
Okay.
But in Show Dogs, I found it bizarre.
How they didn't address
abnormal.
it at all.
What?
They didn't address the talking animal thing at all.
Yeah, none of the humans know that the dogs can talk. Even though Will Arnett, his acting is so poorly directed that his reaction shots to Max are similar to what, like, it looks like he can understand him.
Yeah, even though he
doesn't. But I find it strange. Like, wait, that's not normal for the humans to not talk back to the dogs in a talking dog movie. And then I had to think on it. I was like, no, wait, it is. But why all of a sudden does it not seem right? It's because Robert Vince's movies make the interaction smooth enough that it's kind of like the humans may or may not understand. They definitely don't, but you kind of feel like they might, if that makes sense.
Well,
when you say Will Arnett and Talking Dog, I just think of Mr. Peanut Butter.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, when I think of talking, first of all, that's Paul F. Tompkins who's Mr. Peanut Butter.
But Will Arnett's BoJack.
Oh, yeah, true. Good point.
Yeah. So yeah, that was. I don't know why. I don't know. Does that sound anywhere close to on base? Like, am I making any sense?
No, I get it. That makes sense. Even though things don't make sense.
Yeah. It's I mentioned this in our review too that we'll be publishing soon. That something about Roger Gosnell's movies is that every character is incredibly annoying, and that is apparently supposed to translate to family friend or humor that the kids will like.
Yeah,
but there's these three kids that were just like, I fucking hate them so much. Like the ridiculously annoying characters.
Mm-hmm.
Like, tear your hair out annoying. Like, I couldn't stand it. And again, no laughter in theater at all. I think somebody laughed once at a fart joke, some 5-year-old kid down in front.
Boy.
But that's it. I mean, there was no laughter. I think I'm the only one that really laughed out loud, and that was at that one sequence. And other than that, dead silence.
You should be ashamed of yourself.
Yeah. For laughing at Show Dogs, I know.
All right. Well, we'll go ahead and move on then to our next movie on the list. Tell us a little bit about Breaking In.
Breaking In is a movie that
Payback is a mother.
Yes, which is it. Everything about the marketing and that tagline, and when it came time to put our names in for movies, I was like, yes, Breaking In. That's going to be garbage, and I want to review it. I want to watch it right away, and I did. and that movie was both too terrible and not terrible enough, and also kind of good at parts, but also not nearly good enough to be recommendable. It's such a weird movie in terms of quality because it fluctuates a lot.
Well, I've never heard of this. So what's this about?
Okay, so this is about a mother taking her 2 kids up to her late father's home in Wisconsin, of all places. And this home is like a smart home fortress. Like, it has automated security stuff, like the windows and doors lock down automatically. There's cameras, security lights, all kinds of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And she, while they're up there, some thugs ironically get into the house and lock it down with her kids inside and her locked outside. And so she has to figure out how to break back into the house and save her children.
What?
That's actually a pretty good concept on its own. It's kind of like a reverse home invasion thriller, and it's a lean movie. It's like less than 90 minutes, and so this should be a total recipe for success, especially because you can count the number of characters in the entire movie on probably both hands.
Mm-hmm.
There's like maybe 9 or 10 characters in the whole movie, which is great. Lean, contained thriller. So backtracking a bit, the movie begins with what happened to the main character. The main character's name is Sean, and she's played by Gabrielle Union. Her dad is going to go for a jog, and this was already kind of a weird scene because the movie opens with a shot behind him as he's kind of like hunched over, sitting on a bench in his walk-in closet, and there's like dramatic music, like ooh, and then he opens up a drawer, and there's like a bunch of watches in there, and he puts one of them on, and there's still this dramatic music, like I don't know what he's gonna go do, but then the next thing he picks up is his iPod and the earbuds, and he puts his earbuds in, and all of a sudden this really upbeat jogging tune starts playing. And so he's jogging. Yeah, it's weird. He's jogging around town. And at this point, you can kind of guess what might happen because he crosses the street and is immediately and hilariously drilled by a car from out of nowhere. And it's supposed to be a very dramatic scene, but like I lost it right away, and which was funny because the lady next to me was really into the whole movie. And just 20 seconds in, she's like, oh, he's gasping, like, oh my goodness, somebody died.
That's always I mean, I don't know how bad the movie was, but it's always weird when there's like one person in the theater that's enjoying it. Like when I saw The Boy Next Door, these girls got really mad at me for laughing.
How can you not laugh at that movie, though?
I don't know. I don't fucking know. They were in their early 20s. I guess they just saw it for J-Lo.
Or Ryan, wait, it wasn't Ryan Felipe, was it?
I don't know. Either way, they were there. They weren't there to have fun with the movie. They weren't there to laugh at the movie.
They were there to watch a serious stalker drama, God damn it. It happens to people. But then, somebody steps out of the car and curb stomps the dad. And so you're like, oh, it's a murder, so something's gonna happen.
Mm-hmm.
So the 3 villains, well, the only important one, well, the only one I remember, they're not all of them are important. The only name I remember is Billy Burke plays the main villain, and yes, Billy Burke is the dad from Twilight.
Oh, okay.
So he's playing the bad guy,
aka not Bill Hader.
Yeah.
Oh, great. Because Bill Hader is in that show on HBO, Barry, which is
I
really
watched
good.
the pilot of that last night. Yeah,
Very
I want to
good.
see more of it.
And Billy Burke is either playing a very calm, serious role or is bored out of his fucking mind, and I'm not really sure which one it is. This leads to one of the funniest parts in the whole movie, because this is a PG-13 film, which means that, of course, you can't show too much violence, and you don't really get to swear all that much. Which leads to my favorite line in the whole movie, when Billy Burke tells his henchmen, "You follow the frickin' plan."
Frickin'.
He says frickin'.
Because it's a PG-13.
Do they use their one fuck?
Yes, and it's on another really bad line where the mom is fighting back, and she's like, "You broke into the wrong fucking house."
Yeah. There's an art to using the one fuck in a PG-13.
Yeah. I mean, it was a moment of it was kind of an intense moment. Like, I'll give the movie that. It was kind of exciting in that time, and that's one of the frustrating parts about this movie is that it's directed by James McTeague, who did V for Vendetta, Ninja Assassin, The Raven, and movies that get progressively worse the further down you go on the list. But he's this guy can, when he wants to, make a fun movie. Like Ninja Assassin was not very good, but that movie was ridiculously violent and very entertaining in a lot of different ways.
Mm-hmm.
And I was kind of looking forward to a director of his visual panache to be directing this, because this is my biggest problem with the movie, is that it's got a lot of really interesting set pieces and it looks kind of cool, especially during that climactic sequence. But then at the beginning of the movie, the characters get to the house and they're kind of walking around and kind of seeing where the rooms are and everything. And this scene should be establishing this sense of visual foreshadowing. So you get a good sense of the layout of the house, where everything is, so that in the second half of the film, when the characters are running down a hallway and a bad guy is in a room at the end of the hallway, you can know how close they are to each other and feel that tension with, with that chase. But the visual layout of the house makes no sense. There's not really any idea where anything is. Like, apparently the computer room is in the basement, and I didn't know this until I read a review that mentioned that. And maybe the review might have been wrong, but there's really no sense of place to anything in the house. So when you do have those scenes later on where people are chasing each other to the house, you don't know. It's like, oh, well, that guy's at the hall and that girl's in the room, but for all I know, they could be on different floors.
Mm-hmm.
So it's very, very the visual. I don't know how else to describe it. If you remember, Don't Breathe had a fantastic credit sequence where the camera goes to the house, not only mapping out the entire house in almost one full take, but also using objects to foreshadow things that would happen later on, like the fan and stuff like that.
That's the blind guy turkey baser full of cum movie.
Yeah, the turkey baster full of cum movie.
That's what'll forever be remembered as.
It was not bad, but like when it got there, it just took me like completely out of it.
Yeah, which was funny because Fede Alvarez said that he was making that movie in response to fans saying that Evil Dead was nothing but shock value.
Mm-hmm.
So to him then, to him, that isn't shock value then, having a tube.
I mean, the only thing he heard when they said shock value was the gore.
Okay.
I'm assuming. But that's neither here nor there. In any case, that movie is good and it's very well directed, especially visually and knowing where things are in the house. With the characters going through the house and the different cuts that it takes and the place the cuts occur, there is no way to really map out where this house is or how this house is on the inside and where characters are when it comes to that point, which was very, very frustrating how it pulled out all of the tension from those scenes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sometimes it can be, if you feel like you have to constantly make a map in your head of where everyone is, that can really hurt a movie's impact, I think.
Yes, and it really, really did for this movie. The other three bad guys, one of the bad guys is played by a guy who looks distractingly like Doug Jones, the cinema snob.
Doug Walker. Doug Jones is an actor.
That's right. I always mess that up. Doug Walker, the cinema snob.
Brad Jones is the cinema snob.
God
Doug
damn it.
Walker,
yeah, you're right. Doug Walker.
Doug Walker is the nostalgia critic.
Oh, yeah, whatever.
Whatever.
Doug Jones, Brad Jones.
He looks like the fucking cinema snob, okay?
Doug. Dig Doug. The video game.
So he's dispatched relatively quickly when he chases Sean into the woods, and then she ties him up because he's stupid. And the other two villains, one is, I can't remember what the actor's name is, but he's this really famous Mexican actor who usually plays like cartel and gangsters and stuff. His first idea is, let's kill the kids. And he pulls out this fucking gigantic knife. And the other bad guy is like this guy with a little bit of 5 o'clock shadow and like bleached hair. And I swear to God, he looks like the lead singer of My Chemical Romance or Good Charlotte or one of those fucking bands from the 90s and early 2000s that your little sister listened to. And he's all like, he's very, very, he doesn't want to hurt anybody. He just wants to get the money and go out. And that's brings us to the money, is these crooks have heard that somewhere in the house is a safe containing $4 million because Sean's dad was a money launderer or something. And so he liquidated all of his assets and put it in this safe, which leads one to question why he did not also liquidate this very expensive looking house. But this movie mentions and then abandons plot threads almost every few minutes. Like the bad guys do mention, it's like, oh, you know, ever since we cut the phone lines and disabled the alarms, which means that we only have 90 minutes till the cops get here. Which means that the cops wait 90 minutes after an alarm gets deactivated and phone lines disabled completely before they're like, hey, let's go check that out. And they never reference that time frame. They reference that time frame one more time, and then that's it. And it's really, there is no sense of urgency to their plan, because Billy Burke's character is basically, he's like, I could do this all night. I'll just have a standoff with his mom and keep her kids hostage till she decides to tell me where the safe is. So there are some exciting moments in the movie, namely that climactic sequence and some other things where she gets to be a badass and fight back against the bad guys, and a couple of kind of fun death scenes, which are still kind of neutered by the PG-13. But then the rest of the movie is just there's no logic, and it takes itself way too seriously. Like, this should be something hilarious. It should be, we'll talk about a different movie later on, but it should have been more like some of the other campy stuff that came out this month. But it's not, which is disappointing. It's probably worth renting to laugh at a few things, but it's not going to be the absolute riot that the trailers made it out to be.
All right. Well, so I'll be skipping that one. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and move on to my next movie that I saw, and I'm gonna be honest, I don't have a whole hell of a lot to say about this movie, which is Tully, Jason Reitman's latest movie.
From the director of Labor Day.
Yeah, but also some good movies.
Sure.
Young adult, I really enjoy. I think Up in the Air is a great movie.
Yep.
Thank You for Smoking is, I think, still his best.
I agree.
But Tully is a movie that is it's a really solid movie that covers a subject I don't give a fuck about.
What, being a mother?
How hard it is making the choice to be a mother, and then complaining about how hard it is, because to me, I guess I don't have a parenting instinct, because my opinion is, if you make that decision, you're going in knowing that your life from that point forward is going to be lived through your children. And
that's true.
And,
but
and if you don't go in like that, then you are either stupid, or I don't know. I just don't have that much empathy for that. Admittedly, I don't. And yes, someone's going to say, "But you don't have kids, so you don't know how that feels." And I'm like, "Yeah, you're right," and I don't want to.
I'm not saying that.
But you don't go around having unprotected sex either.
No.
I think I don't want to be a dad. I'd rather be an uncle, so I can just like kind of have the kids every once in a while and spoil them a little bit, and then
I am an uncle, and
send them back up. Yeah.
and being an uncle is the best job, because you have no responsibility.
Exactly. All you gotta do is not lose them when you go to the amusement park.
Now I did say I don't care about the central conflict, but I will say this: Charlize Theron's performance makes you care about it, even if you really don't. And it's a very interesting movie that goes some places that you maybe don't expect. And I think some people were turned off by where it goes, and some people weren't. Because throughout the movie, so for those who don't know the plot, Charlize Theron is this mother who is taking care of two children. She's a stay-at-home mother, and she is just completely at the end of her rope. Her husband, played by Ron Livingston, in keeping with Ron Livingston's character from Office Space, couldn't give a fuck, and he shows up, he does the dad thing, and then he goes back and plays video games.
Oh boy!
And so one of the problems is one of her children has this serious like behavioral disorder that makes the kid kind of like a really evil bastard to be around. Goes into these crazy anger fits where won't stop until she gets her way, or she gets her way. You know, that's I don't remember if it was a boy or girl, but either way, it's just, you know, and the other girl's fine, but this it becomes a problem to the point where they're even the school's trying to kick the girl out too. And this is kind of a lower middle class existence that they live. Okay. Both of the kids are being sent to private school at the behest of her brother, because her brother has the money to help pay for their schooling and is insistent on helping that.
Who played the brother?
Oh shit! Give me a second here. Oh, Mark Duplass. I remember his
character in the trailer, but I'm drawing a total blank in my mind.
Mark Duplass.
Oh, okay. So I wasn't okay. So also in my mind, I was like, Mark Duplass or Ron Livingston.
Yeah, Ron Livingston is the husband.
Okay, that's what I. Then okay, good. They look so much alike.
You know, I can kind of see that too. So anyway, what ends up happening is Mark Duplass sees that his sister is suffering and is really, you know, starting to lose it, and so he suggests that they hire a stay-at-home night nurse who is going to take care of the kids. Basically, she comes in at night, she puts the kids to bed, she sees to any needs they have overnight, and kind of does some basic cleanup around the house, stuff like that. You know, just stuff to make her evenings more bearable. And he offers to do that, and at first, Charlize Theron is just against the idea. It's a threat to her motherhood, and eventually she caves and she looks into the option. And this played by Mackenzie Davis, this night nurse named Tully shows up at their door and is almost creepily good at everything she does, to the point where it literally is starting to like be mirror opposite of everything Charlize Theron has.
Which
she embodies everything that Charlize Theron wishes she has.
Why isn't that a plot point in Mary Poppins?
that could be, and I'll bet that was in the book. I never read the book.
I've never read the book, but yeah, like she just comes in. I mean, she is a little creepy, but she's great at her job. It's like everything you just described.
Yeah, you could easily call this like a realistic Mary Poppins, because
does the dad fuck the au pair? That's what I
okay. That's a spoiler I'll give away. There isn't any weird, creepy romantic relationship in this movie, even though there's a heavy implication at one point that might happen.
Mm-hmm.
But there is another twist, a very major twist, and I don't want to give it away unless you guys are determined to never see this movie. So tell me. Do you?
I don't care about spoilers, and if I do see this movie, I might have forgotten what you're about to tell me. So,
what do you think, Hawk?
You can say. I mean, I might see it eventually, but it's probably gonna be a movie where I'll never be in the mood to watch.
Okay. So. Yeah, it's one of those for sure. I'm glad I saw it, but I have no need to see it again.
Mm-hmm.
But I am definitely glad I saw it. I think I will say that as far as like from a perspective of, is this a well-made movie, I would rank this highly amongst movies made by Jason Reitman and written by Diablo Cody. This is one of her better ones. But
she wrote this. Okay.
She wrote Young Adult as well.
That was my first reaction too.
Young Adult. When's the last time you watched Young Adult?
Well, I saw it
first came out.
Yeah, I haven't seen it in a while.
Okay. Well, either way, I enjoyed Young Adult. I liked the nihilistic aspect of it and the fucked up sex scene with her and
Patton Oswalt?
Patton Oswalt, yeah. That is just like it's not good for either of them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I enjoyed that. But anyway, so in this movie, here's the twist. So the movie goes through this whole thing of, you know, just the life has been turned around and everything seems to be going great. And Tully shows up one night and tells Charlize that her job is done. She has to go. and Charlize is distressed and doesn't like that. She, she doesn't want Tully to go. She wants Tully to keep doing things because, the two of them have started to become friends, and the kids are taken care of so well overnight. And just Tully tells her that I was only there to bridge a gap for you. And anyway, so they decide to make a night of it, and so they go out on the town together and have kind of a girls' night out. They do some drinking, and while driving home, Charlize Theron falls asleep at the wheel and is in a horrible accident.
Right on.
And when she wakes up, she keeps asking, where's Tully? Was she still in the car? Here's the twist: there was no Tully.
Oh wow, that's.
I know it sounds like a generic Hollywood twist kind of thing to do, but the way they do it actually is interesting in that basically the way the film is made, everything that Tully is doing can be easily explained away by Charlize Theron going into this weird manic fit and working herself into basically insanity. And for one thing, the husband never actually saw Tully. He would always go to bed, and then she would show up.
So what you're telling me is that
what did the brother do?
She didn't talk to the brother. The brother knew nothing about it.
Oh, I thought he was like, "Hey, here's some meth."
Yeah, see, the brother proposed the idea, and she turned it down, and so she never got back to him.
Okay.
So that's why it it all feels logical, and the way they do it. Yes, it's a twist that it's one of those twists that you could see coming technically. I didn't see it coming. I was actually surprised by it, and I was intrigued by the way they went with it. And it makes sense because right before she decides to call Tully, she goes into a crying fit that is just the most psychotic thing you've ever seen. She's in her car. She's just yelled at the principal of the school who's kicking her kid out, and she's just panicking, and her makeup is running all over the place. And Charlize Theron acts the fuck out of this movie. I have to give her a lot of credit for it. And the twist, and basically the twist is this interesting thing where she just, she compartmentalized, and it created this, psychological break that for a while she was able to keep up with herself and live this double life, but eventually that's going to give.
Have you ever wanted to see the plot of Mary Poppins with the ending of Fight Club?
Actually, yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, no. So overall, I would say, the movie is it's a very good movie. It's just not my kind of movie because the subject matter is just. I don't give a shit about movies with babies.
With babies?
Oh yeah, I'm sorry, I forgot to say Charlize Theron's also pregnant at the same time. All of this is happening. So not only is she having, I forgot to mention that, not only is she fucked up because she's dealing with these two children she can't control, she has another baby on the way.
And also some potential mental disorders.
Yeah, a real serious fucking mental disorder.
I would say, back to your earlier comment, Bill, I would almost prefer a Fight Club version of Amelia Bedelia.
Oh,
that's a fucking deep well to mine from.
What if that's how that series ended?
It's like the homeowners are just fucking crazy, and like somebody keeps messing with shit in the house, and they're blaming it on this. Like really, they're just passively aggressively acting out against each other, and they imprint this upon this imaginary idiot that comes to take care of the house during the day. Ken, you've read Amelia Bedelia, right?
I have no idea what you guys are talking about right now.
It's a children's book. I haven't read it since I was a kid.
It's a children's book series where like Amelia Bedelia is this maid, and she's really nice and bubbly, and and she's given instructions throughout the day, and she always interprets them incorrectly and fucks things up. So like, when he's like, "Oh, at noon, draw the curtains," and
Oh, so she
she's
takes
like, "Oh,
things
okay."
literally and actually draws the curtains.
She draws the curtains instead of, closing them, so the couches get all faded and she gets in trouble. And then at the end of every story, like, she's so nice and sincere that they just forgive her for it, and they kind of love her for it, and they keep hiring her back for some goddamn reason.
Yeah.
Okay.
They're good books.
I'm sure they are. I'm sure they are. Just like this is a good movie, and you guys will probably never see it.
Well, now that you gave me that twist, I kind of don't want to see it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean,
I would also be very upset to learn that Mackenzie Davis did not exist. So,
so speaking of something you'll probably be upset to hear doesn't exist, bad segue. Batman Ninja. Tell us about it.
I would be sad to hear that Batman. If I woke up and was like, they're like, Batman Ninja. What are you talking about? It's 1982, and I would be like, I'd be very sad because Batman Ninja is awesome. So basically what happens with Batman Ninja is that Warner Brothers owns Batman, and they were like, here, anime studio and the creator of Afro Samurai, make a movie, an anime movie about Batman. And they did, and it's fucking ridiculous. It involves Batman kind of fighting with Gorilla Grodd in the present day, and Gorilla Grodd has a time machine, and as they're fighting the time machine...
Wait, how did he get this? Is that explained?
Gorilla Grodd?
Yeah.
Gorilla Grodd's a genius. He can do whatever he wants.
Okay.
Gorilla Grodd is an extremely smart supervillain.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm thinking of Solomon Grundy. I'm sorry.
Solomon Grundy. No, Gorilla Grodd, the very smart gorilla.
Who are these people you keep mentioning?
They're DC villains.
Oh, are you not very well versed with DC villains, Ken?
No, I do not give a crap about DC.
I've
never. Other than Batman, if it's not a Batman villain, I have no idea.
Well, Gorilla Grodd is a Batman villain.
How? Because the Batman villains are okay. If it's not a Batman villain featured in the TV series,
he's like a B/C list. I think he's been on the animated series.
He's definitely been in the animated series.
Yeah.
Okay.
In any case, he's more of I think he started out as more of a Flash villain, then kind of more Justice League, and then made his way and tussling with Batman. But basically, Gorilla Grodd is a telepathic gorilla. He can control minds. He's insanely smart. It's kind of a wacky storyline, but all you need to know about him in this movie is that he's created a time machine, and while fighting with Batman, the machine turns on and sends him, Batman, and a whole bunch of other rogues back in time to feudal Japan. And when Batman wakes up, he finds that Japan has been split up, and that Poison Ivy, Two-Face, Penguin, and Deathstroke have each conquered part of Japan and intend to take over the entire country. And then the main portion of Japan is controlled by Joker. And so Batman teams up with Red Skull, Red Robin, and Catwoman.
Red Hood. Red Hood,
I'm sorry.
I was going to say, wow.
The Red Skull would be awesome.
And he's suddenly a good guy.
Yeah, well, I mean, Infinity War kind of fucked around with Red Skull anyway, so.
Are you familiar with the Red Hood story stuff, Ken?
The only thing I know about the Red Hood thing is the Red Hood was like Robin. Wasn't it like Robin actually killing people or something?
Yeah,
something else.
He was the second Robin, Jason Todd, who got killed in a very infamous storyline back in the 80s. And then I don't remember when the Red Hood stuff came out, but it was revealed that he didn't die and he comes back as this like Punisher type of anti-hero.
Mm-hmm.
He's basically doing the job that Batman couldn't, and he was like, oh, if you could just kill people, then I wouldn't have been killed by the Joker.
Yes, yeah.
But it was an intense scene, like a landmark for comic books, because he was beaten to death with a crowbar by the Joker.
Oh, damn.
That is also portrayed or referenced in the Batman Beyond movie, the Return of the Joker, I think it's called. Yeah.
Which is a great Batman movie.
Yeah. The Joker like makes Jason Todd into his mini-me.
But that was so fucked up.
Yeah. So anyway, Ninja Lego Batman.
So yes, Batman teams up with these guys and is like, we're gonna take down the Joker. And so this is kind of like the fact that this is an anime, it goes all out with the anime influences. So within the first half of the movie, Batman is driving towards Joker's castle with his bat pod, and the castle turns into a giant robot, and he kind of faces off with the Joker inside the robot. And then he jumps out using his bat pod, and then all of a sudden, Bane, who is a fucking sumo wrestler and a giant sumo wrestler, is getting ready to fight him, and Batman rips apart his bat pod and turns it into a suit of armor to fight Bane with. Like, it's so much crazy shit in this movie, and I loved it.
Okay.
The art style is really beautiful. That's all I want to say about the plot. It's why I'm jumping into the art style. Is that it's really, really nice. It looks really cool. It's very colorful. Even the sky has kind of its own look to it, or everything kind of looks like this painting, which is so beautiful to look at. And I was very happy that the Amazon rental lasts for 14 days. So I had a couple of times to just revisit it and look at certain shots.
Mm-hmm.
So that's definitely worth a rental just for the visuals alone. One thing that kind of bugged me, this is a really weird criticism, not even really criticism, but just a thought or a reaction, is that when you rent it on Amazon, it comes up as a 2 hour and 50-minute play. I was like, wow, they really went all out with this epic. Yeah. This is going to be crazy. Mm-hmm. As it turns out, sadly, it's about an hour and 20-something minute movie. Mm-hmm. And it basically, when the Amazon rental is the English version followed by the Japanese version just immediately. It's the two versions, one after the other.
Are they edited differently, or is it just the dialogue track?
The dialogue is different, but I read this article that was very interesting that the two guys that translated Batman Ninja for American audiences, they didn't really have much of a script to go off of, because according to them, anime is very visuals forward. Like, they come up with the visuals and the action and stuff like that before they
storyboard it.
They storyboard it, yeah, but the actual dialogue isn't really factored in until after everything else is said and done. So they had like a 6-page script to go off of. So they had to kind of use the cues as well as the story that they knew about to fill in their own dialogue.
Right.
So I was hoping for this 3-hour epic, especially considering that with the fact that they foreshadow the all these 4 villains, Poison Ivy, Penguin, Two-Face, and Deathstroke, each controlling part of Japan, that Batman would go to each of those 4 regions and defeat the villain and unite Japan against the Joker. But that didn't really happen. It's kind of like they just all of them show up at the end and there's this huge fight, which is fine. It works as the movie, but I kind of like readied myself for this 3-hour anime epic of Batman in Japan, and it didn't do that, which wasn't the original vision, so I'm fine with that. It's just it comes down to how weird it is that they smush those two versions together. The Japanese version is better in terms of dialogue, because there's a lot of moments in the English dub where the character will kind of say a couple extra things to kind of fill in the additional mouth moving of the Japanese character. Mm-hmm. So, Joker, he's talking and he's like, "Oh, I am, but you can call me Lord Joker." Whereas in the Japanese version, the Joker actually references the name of the region they're in, which stands for such and such, and isn't that fitting to him as the Joker? And so there's a lot more flavor to the way the Joker talks in the Japanese version, which I preferred. That doesn't mean that Tony Hale isn't good as the Joker in the English
version. Buster Bluth plays the Joker?
Yeah, Buster Bluth is the Joker, and he's pretty good.
I need to see this now.
Yeah. He's good. The one other thing I liked about Batman Ninja is that it kind of positioned Joker as not really an equal, but someone who could go toe-to-toe with Batman in a physical fight. He's very quick and good with a blade, so there's a sword fight a couple of times in the movie, which was kind of neat that they did that with the anime version. And it was kind of a different feel for the Joker, which I kind of liked that as well. It felt like Japan's love letter to Batman when everything was said and done, and I really appreciated that. This, I would say, is one of my favorite Batman movies, and easily his best animated film since Mask of the Phantasm.
Wow, well, that says a lot.
So that's all I have to say about Batman Ninja. Check it out. It's a $5 or $6 rental on Amazon. It's a lot of fun.
All right. Well then, in that case, Well, let's see. We'll go ahead and we'll hold off on Deadpool a little bit because I think we're gonna have a lot to say about that one. Why don't we get Book Club out of the way? Because you saw this.
Oh, I totally forgot about Book Club. Yeah. This is a movie that I am doing another debate review with Felix on. She came to me and said, "Well, it's kind of a 50 Shades movie, so we've got to do a review, right? Because we did all the other 50 Shades." And even she was like, "Okay, so I know you really probably don't want to do this, but what do you think?" And I said, "Fuck, fine," because she's right. It's kind of about 50 Shades. This is about a group of aging women played by Jane Fonda and some other ones. Can't remember. I'm like totally blanked.
Diane Keaton
and the Mary Steenburgen.
Yep.
Who I think is, full disclosure, I think she's adorable. I've loved her ever since Step Brothers.
She's in Back to the Future 3.
Oh yeah, you're right. Shit, I need to watch the Back to the Future trilogy again. And Candice Bergen.
Yeah.
Who I am the least familiar with, but I recognize her in the movie. Like I was like, oh, I know her, but I don't know what from.
That's DJ from Full House, right?
No,
no, that's Candace Cameron. I'm sorry.
I wasn't sure if you were trying to make a joke or not.
No, I was legitimately confused there.
No, Jesus, Candice Bergen's way older than that. That's quite a compliment to her. No, Candice Bergen. She was in. She was Murphy Brown.
Yes, Murphy
Brown. That's right. Yeah, but she's also in one of my favorite movies from the '60s, The Sand Pebbles with Steve McQueen. Really good movie there.
Right.
A lot of stuff.
So the book club is about these four women. Diane Keaton's character is her husband passed away, and she's getting old, and her kids are trying to convince her to move to Arizona and move in with them because they're afraid of her well-being getting up there in age. Jane Fonda is this all she does, she has sex and she doesn't really care. Like she doesn't love people. It all came from she banged this guy on a radio show, like, or not on a radio show, but the guy that was running the soundboard, she banged him one time. And
Howard Stern show.
Yeah, he's played by this guy in the present time is played by Don Johnson, which is really, really weird when you consider that Don Johnson's daughter is Anastasia Steele in the 50 Shades movies.
Right.
Yeah, that's not just weird, that's borderline creepy.
Felix called it crunchy weirdness.
Yeah, I like
one of the most off-putting things I've ever heard in my life. But Candice Bergen is a federal judge who can't find love. And Mary Steenburgen is a married woman whose sexual life with her husband has kind of lost its I don't have a good sex pun, but
lust. Well, okay,
it's lust.
Lust.
Yeah, that's good. They decide they all have a book club. They're like, oh, they read books all the time, and when it comes to Jane Fonda's month, she suggests 50 Shades of Grey. And they're all like, ew, no. And then they all read it, and they're all really enthralled by it, and they all have sexual awakenings, and it goes from there. Diane Keaton meets Andy Garcia on a plane and sexually harasses him. And through a scene, it was a really awkward scene that made me kind of uncomfortable that it was played for comedy, because she sees this hot guy, lounging and snoozing on the plane, and she deliberately trips over him so she can land on top of him and wake him up. And then when the plane has turbulence, they're taking off, she grabs his balls.
Whoa.
He's like, oh, I'm Andy Garcia. And later, it turns out that he's the pilot, and he comes out of the cockpit wearing a stupid looking hat that covers his eyes for some fucking reason, and gets her number, and they go on dates and stuff. Jane Fonda meets Don Johnson's character, and they have adventures together and remember when they were young, and he still likes her and she's afraid to commit. Candice Bergen fucks around on Bumble for a while, and Mary Steenburgen spikes her husband's beer with Viagra just to try to get him to have sex with her. And, you know, I know I'm not like the target demographic for this movie or whatever, but man, this movie was fucking boring and nothing. There's no plot. It's just kind of like, oh, they read this book and they all do sex things. Like, who the fuck cares? There's no escalation of the second act up to a climax and then a refractory period after that. It's just nothing happens. It's just these people talking and they're making jokes that your mom would post on Facebook and tag you in. And it's not very funny, except for the people in the theater were laughing really hard. They're all laughing really hard. Everybody was like,
somebody created a movie where the existence of 50 Shades of Grey is integral to the plot.
Yeah.
That's insane.
Yeah, I don't know. This is a really bad movie. I would rather rewatch the entire 50 Shades trilogy back to back in one sitting, no bathroom breaks, than watch this thing again. I'll say what I said on Twitter. It was like being tied up and force-fed existential dread. Because everybody's like, oh, I'm getting old. That's so sad. Life is passing me by and I can't have sex anymore. And also like all the characters are super rich. So it's like also kind of like, you know what? Fuck you. You're flying around on a plane and fucking in a villa in the middle of Arizona. It's bad.
I got an alternate ending here, inspired by Tully, which is where they all get into car accidents and they wake up and 50 Shades doesn't exist.
Get me behind a wheel. It's a bad movie. I mean, and nobody is surprised, right? It's awful and it's boring and
it sounds like the target demographic is, you know, women in their 40s, 50s.
And they were whichever women brought their husbands, the husbands were laughing. I mean, they're probably happy that they're seeing this instead of 50 Shades. Because I remember when I saw each of the 3 50 Shades movies in theaters, you'd see women coming in and just the husbands or boyfriends just, you know, trudging behind, not walking, trudging behind them. Oh, I gotta fucking see this.
Yeah, but
I did hear a lot of male laughter in this movie. So, you know, it's good for them for enjoying it. It's not my movie. There are significant problems with the way it's shot and edited and written and everything else. It's just it really is a lot of characters setting somebody else up for a joke. And it's like, you know, something sex related.
Right.
He's like, oh, I haven't had sex in like 6. She's like, oh, 6 days. She's like, oh, like months. And she's like, oh my God, what happens to a vagina when it doesn't have sex? And everybody laughs in the movie and in the theater.
What?
It's really, it's just bad. I don't recall laughing once, although I do like Andy Garcia a lot, and at least the movie was bearable for his moments. And Dawn Johnson was charming, and all of these women are good actresses, so it was fine to watch them interacting with each other. So, other than that,
more or less forgettable.
More forgettable, more than not less, just more.
Right.
Okay, incredibly forgettable. How about that?
Yeah, and
sounds like you're in a restaurant.
It's bad. Was what?
I said it sounds like you're in a restaurant. I can hear dishes.
Somebody's fixing the dishes. Sorry.
All right. So next on our list, we're gonna finally talk about Deadpool. So first of all, Bill, you saw Deadpool, didn't you?
I did. I watched it on a cam, though, so I wouldn't really call that seeing it. Especially the cam work here was not ideal.
Okay, well, so first of all, Hawk, what did you think of Deadpool 2? Electric Boogaloo.
I enjoyed it quite a bit. Sorry, the dog was barking, so I muted my mic for a second. I'm gonna go see what's going on in a second if he keeps doing it. But I don't think I'm actually in. I think I might be in the minority here. I prefer Deadpool 2 to the original.
This definitely fleshes things out a lot more than the original did. and some of the jokes land a little better. I don't know how they're going to age over the coming year.
They might not. Like I said it in my trailer reviews, but Deadpool 1 is a movie that I enjoyed exactly once.
Yeah.
And as soon as the credits started rolling, it was immediately dated.
Kind of, yeah. Like, I can still watch it and have fun with it, but it's more just like Ryan Reynolds in that role. Like, he's so perfectly cast.
Yeah,
So-
I mean, it's his passion project. This is his baby, making this
So
movie. He's been wanting to do this for a long time.
My feelings on the matter is that I think both movies are uneven in their own way, and
Yeah.
to say one is better than the other.
I'm sure if anybody goes back and listens to our review of the original Deadpool, we're like fucking circle jerking all over it.
Well, there is a lot to like, and you know, it's certainly a good movie. It's a movie though that upon rewatching it, it has its issues, and this movie also the main issue in both cases is the fact. Well, actually, you know what? It's a different issue because the first movie I think had a pretty decent villain and a pretty decent story at a basic level. And this movie has it doesn't really have a villain per se, which I thought was an interesting twist.
Mm-hmm.
It has an antagonist.
Juggernaut, I guess.
Yeah, well, I guess, yeah.
Spoilers.
Shit. Yeah, I'm sorry.
It has an
So if you're watching this and haven't seen Deadpool, just rewind time for about 20 seconds.
Sorry, everybody.
Yeah, use Cable's rewind time device.
But only once.
Yeah, but only once. But no, seriously, really the villain of the movie, so to speak, is for the most part, it's Cable until the very end.
Not the very end. I would say it's like
the end of the second act.
Yeah, the third act.
And I think Cable was just a completely underdeveloped character.
He's kind of supposed to be.
How is that a good thing?
Like he's not that interesting. Let me tell you, he's not that interesting in the comics either. So it's not like they do.
Okay, well,
it's not like
I don't care about the comics. I just want an interesting character.
I agree with you.
And how hard is it to make a Kyle Reese like Terminator style, like I came from the future character? I mean, Kyle Reese is an interesting character in the first Terminator movie.
Michael Biehn is a badass. I don't know what to tell you. And also, better script, first of all.
Yeah, well, you know, that goes without saying.
Yeah.
So, you know, I just have always I found it problematic.
This is just my interpretation, and it might change when I actually get to see the movie in better quality. But it just felt like sort of you know, he's that grizzled badass dude from the future. Like they're making fun of that, I guess, in a way. Josh Brolin is not really trying to elevate this material, but he's not doing a bad job with it.
First of all, Josh Brolin does everything he possibly can to make this material work, and I don't want to take it away from him at all. He is not to blame.
Mm-hmm. I liked his performance.
Yeah, I like his performance. I just don't think he had anything to do.
I think Bill has a point though. He is just kind of like, that's just the role. He's kind of like, oh, he's the very stoic, you know, like, oh, future man, angry at stuff kind of persona, which is a pretty basic joke, but the movie might have done well by expounding on it a little bit. But I think it kind of fits with Deadpool's brand by just making him this kind of basic antagonist.
Now, I do want to comment on this because, like, I think this is your joke, Ken.
Okay.
Replacing T.J. Miller with Christopher Plummer.
Yes.
Yeah, that's your joke. That is fucking gold. And I'm, you know, time crunch, money problems. I wish this movie would have done that so fucking bad. Like
that would have been amazing.
That would have been such a Deadpool
That doesn't
move.
seem like the kind of movie that Christopher Plummer would agree to be.
Yeah, I know, and that's also.
Hold on. Christopher Plummer has agreed to be in so many bad movies. Maybe not so much anymore.
How much gory stuff is he in? Because this movie does get a little, you know, we'll get to it, but there's some fantastic gory moments in this.
Here's the thing: he was in Star Crash. That's all I have to say. And you know why he did Star Crash?
Why?
The rent was due.
Free trip to Rome.
Oh.
Oh yeah, I believe it.
Yeah, that's literally the reason he chose to do Star Crash. Free trip to Rome.
So, yeah, that would have been good.
Yeah. So,
especially because T.J. Miller he wasn't very funny in this.
Yeah. Well, and I will say this: T.J. Miller has made me laugh. It's just recently, the revelation that he's a huge turd is
he's very charismatic on camera. He's good at riffing. He made a huge fucking mistake that's probably going to sink his career.
Yeah, in a big way.
Yeah.
In this movie, he just didn't have much to do. Although I did enjoy the scene where Cable's about to torture him, and he just gives everything up immediately. It, puts it on Front Street and says, I don't do well with pain, so I'm just going to go ahead and tell you literally everything I know, and we're gonna see how that goes. And I thought, it's like you don't see that in a movie very often. Usually, there's at least the joke of, of them getting a punch in or something, but he didn't even wait for that. He's like, fuck it, I no.
Now,
and then he acts all self-righteous about it later.
Yeah. One of the other things that made me laugh is a spoiler, so I'm going to go ahead and call spoilers here. Juggernaut rips Deadpool in half, and in the first movie they established like when he regenerates, it's like, so there's this scene where he's sitting there with these baby legs and his dick out, and TJ Miller comes in and like makes a few riff jokes about what he looks like, and that made me laugh. But also I love the baby legs thing, like when he stands up and is like face to face with Cable, but he's like half his height.
I actually hated that joke.
It made me think of Baby Legs, the cop thing from Rick and Morty.
Oh yeah, that's true. I thought the joke went on way too long. That was a 10-minute punchline.
Yeah, and we could have done without seeing the dick. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
Whatever. That's it. You can show tits in movies, show a dick. It's there's that great scene in Walk Hard where there's just dudes walking around pantsless.
And there's the one that stops with like his dick, like like a foot away from the guy.
And
from
Jake Kasdan said, I think in the DVD commentary, he was like, "I put that in there just because there's a lack of dicks in these R-rated comedies."
which, funnily enough, around that same maybe 5 to 7 years of movies, there was almost always a full frontal male shot. But that's funny because there's one shot that's not even acknowledged. Like what would hurt the joke and Walk Hard if Dewey made like 5 lines in a row about how there's a dick next to his face. But
yeah, that's true.
It's funny because it's right there, just in the scene.
Yeah, it's not acknowledged; it's just there.
Yeah, and then in Deadpool 2, you have every character in the room acknowledging that the Deadpool is not only naked from the waist down, but has the child legs.
It's funny.
I have to say one of my favorite parts in the movie is the whole assembling of the X-Force and then the revelation literally within minutes of it that no, they're all gonna die like now.
Yeah.
I thought that was hilarious and brilliant, and it was perfect because it makes total sense. Deadpool doesn't give a shit about these people, and he doesn't even need them. He just did it because that's what people do in this sort of movie.
He kind of gives a shit. He was horrified.
No. Well, that's what I was going to say. That's kind of the interesting thing about this movie is that Deadpool has a character arc. Like he ends up caring at the end.
Yeah. Well, you say he was horrified, but it was his fake Deadpool horrified. He was just like, oh no, that.
But I think Deadpool is so crazy that his fake horrified is genuine. Like there's a moment in the comics where he's being himself, and Xavier gets into his head to shut him down, and then upon entering his mind, Xavier realizes that Deadpool is fully aware of the fact that he and everyone around him is a comic book character, and that causes Xavier to go crazy.
That's funny.
Which is like, I think Deadpool's all of his overreactions are hilarious. Like when he first picked up Cable's gun during the prison fight, and he like found the dial that increases the power. He's like, oh, like he was like found the coolest toy ever. Again, it all comes back down to Ryan Reynolds' performance being absolutely fantastic.
And I have to say that I want to give a lot of credit to some of the other side characters in this. Domino,
Yes.
by Zazie Bates, I think is her name, or Beats.
Yeah.
Really cool character, and I love the way it was written and the whole concept. Because I actually looked up Domino when I heard that she was a character that was going to be in this, and Domino, as the comic book character is written, her powers aren't exactly the same as the way this movie deals with it. Her powers are that she can manipulate things to make the odds go closer to her favor.
She's like Dirk Gently.
Right. Well, versus what I liked more is the way they dealt with it here is that she just trusts that everything is going to be okay, and it is for her. Not necessarily for anyone around her, but her. She's okay. She's going to be all right. And I thought that was an interesting take on the concept, rather than just just everything, that she can manipulate things. I liked that that's chaos. Like what she has no control over it. She just has to trust that it's going to work out.
I love that Deadpool, like, as he's laying there dying, he's like, I want you to have my Adventure Time watch.
Yeah. And of course the superhero movie trope of the death being completely pointless, and that was fine for this type of movie because it's very meta. What was I going to say? Was there something?
I don't know.
Hawk, are you still there?
He's probably dealing with his dog or something.
I was going to say, because...
So, yeah, let's talk about the character arc stuff that happens in the movie. He loses the love of his life.
Until the next one.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So see, I know what happens during the credits, but the cam cut off. So.
And Ryan Reynolds did say that they're not actually entirely certain how that'll go in the next one. Like, that may or may not be canon.
Mm-hmm.
Oh well, yeah, they'll bring her back.
But I did really love the opening credits, directed by one of the guys that killed the dog in John Wick.
Yes,
which is great because it is one of the directors of the original John Wick, the uncredited one, David Leitch.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And then before that, I was like, hey, wait, what the fuck?
Yeah, I want to see the credit scenes so bad. I hear he goes back to Wolverine Origins and kills fake Deadpool.
So the post-credit sequence, again, spoilers, we already established this. Negasonic Teenage Warhead,
and her girlfriend,
which it should be pointed out that kudos to the movie for actually making Negasonic have a girlfriend. It's like, hey, you know what? She's a lesbian and she has a girlfriend. Who the fuck cares?
They don't make a big deal about it.
No, they don't even mention, like it's just that's what it is.
That's great.
Except for the fact that Negasonic, she kind of implies that Deadpool is a bigot, and he's like, whoa, pump the hate brakes. And I think he says something else that implies that he was surprised for a different reason.
Mm-hmm.
But in any case, they repair Cable's time travel device for Deadpool, which I don't know why they did that in any case, which I hope that later on it's expounded that Negasonic does have some degree of sibling affection for Deadpool. But in any case, what?
That's the impression I get.
Yeah, which I think is great. And so they repair Cable's time travel device, and the first thing Deadpool does is go back in time and murder the Deadpool from Wolverine Origins by shooting him in the head.
That's what he does first? He doesn't save his girlfriend first?
Oh, no, he saves the girlfriend first.
Oh, okay. I was going to say, that'd be priority.
Yeah, no, this is the extra credit.
Yeah. And then the second thing he does, this is actually probably one of the things I laughed hardest at in the entire movie, is that it has Ryan Reynolds. He's like, "You're welcome to the big leagues, pal." And there's a shot from behind him. He's looking at a script of Green Lantern. And then you hear this bang, and this blood just splatters onto the script.
Okay. I didn't hear about that one. That's great.
And then you see Ryan Reynolds in front of the shot in front of him. It's like he's got this shit-eating green on his face and a huge bullet hole in his head.
Yeah.
implying that Deadpool went back in time and killed Ryan Reynolds before he could finish Green Lantern.
Now that would just he would cease to exist.
Exactly. But that was fantastic. And then in response to that, Warner Brothers, the company, playfully tweeted at Ryan that they demand the return of the Green Lantern ring from the movie. So they're like fake feuding right now, which is hilarious.
Yeah, that's great.
So in the sequence where he saves his girlfriend in that after credits scene, I thought what was going to happen is that he throws the cheese scraper and kills the guy and saves his girlfriend. What I thought was going to happen is that it would become a montage of him repeatedly attempting and failing to save his girlfriend. Like he'd throw the cheese peeler at the guy and it would hit him in the head, and he'd fall to the ground. The gun would go off and still kill his girlfriend.
There's a Supernatural episode that's like an homage to Groundhog's Day where Dean dies repeatedly. You know what I'm talking about? Yeah. Okay, yeah, that's good stuff. I love stories like that.
Okay, so I thought it would be kind of like the Family Guy joke where Peter keeps messing up his first date with Lois, and he keeps getting Death to rewind time back to the first, when they first set up their date. But again, I thought when I had read an article saying that the end credits is very, very unfair to Ryan Reynolds, and I thought that would be the thing where they would just make this really off-color running joke about his girlfriend continuously dying at the hands of the same bad guy because Deadpool keeps fucking up, killing him and saving the girlfriend. But I'm fine with what they did. Like the Green Lantern thing was absolutely hysterical.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, that's definitely, yeah. I loved that, and I think it's probably one of the biggest laughs I've gotten in a movie in a long time. Just complete don't give a fuck, what Hollywood has to say about it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think even Martin Campbell has disowned that movie.
Yeah, well, I mean, Martin Campbell's a better director than that movie, and
I'm fairly certain I remember it was either this or Casino Royale, where Martin Campbell, he took the job because he was bored. He's like, well, I don't have anything else going on, so
yeah, that sounds about right.
That sounds like about half of the movies he does.
Yeah, well, I mean, and that's a good point. About half, because about half of the movies he does are actually decent, and about half are like weirdly terrible.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like Edge of Darkness was awful.
That's the Mel Gibson one?
The Mel Gibson British.
I'm not going to call that one awful. Edge of Darkness was not... that was more mediocre than anything, I think.
I just, like, the movie is... One of the things that always stuck out with me for Edge of Darkness is that movie takes itself so seriously as a realistic piece of fiction. And then there's a scene where a character dies where the very second she steps out of a car, she gets fucking plowed out of nowhere by a car that must have been going at least 60 miles per hour, which would have meant that this guy would have gotten up to speed and timed it perfectly for this girl to step out of the car and kill her by running her over, which always like, wait a second, that's a great jump scare, but it makes absolutely no sense.
Speaking of which, what's the cab driver's name?
I can't remember.
I don't remember his name. But
Joe Pender.
Okay, him killing the guy at the end was so perfectly timed.
Yes.
Yeah.
That was good.
I actually want to say something really quick about Edge of Darkness. You do know that Martin Campbell actually directed the miniseries that was based on originally?
Yes, I do.
Okay. And so I've always wanted to get a hold of that, but I haven't been able to find it anywhere.
I watched part of it on YouTube when the movie first came out because it was somebody uploaded it on YouTube, and it was actually pretty good. It wasn't as relentlessly dour as the movie was.
Right. Well, I mean, when you're doing a miniseries, you have a lot more that you need to do. I'm wondering if maybe he had right of first refusal as far as like directing that, and he's like the movie version, and maybe he just decided, well, if anyone's going to direct this, it's going to be me, whether it'll be good or not. I don't know.
No, that was his. You misremember that. That was his reaction to Legend of Zorro.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, makes sense.
Legend of Zorro is one of the most violent PG movies I've ever seen. I mean, we don't need to get into Martin Campbell's filmography, but like in the same 20 minutes, that movie has both a drop of nitroglycerin dropping on a bad guy's head and blowing his face up off screen or in the background, and then another guy strapped to the front of a train and plowed into a barrier.
Is that the sequel to Mask of Zorro?
Yes, it's terrible and really bad, and you
Which
should
is
check
too
it
bad
out.
because Mask of Zorro is a decent movie.
Mask of
Zorro is pretty
Zorro.
good.
Mask of Zorro makes a great double feature with Pirates: Curse of the Black Pearl.
Or with Zorro the Gay Blade.
They're both by the same writers, if you didn't know.
Right.
Because I remember watching Mask of Zorro and being like, this feels exactly like a Pirates movie.
Am I still the only one here who's seen Zorro the Gay Blade?
Yes.
No, I've seen it.
Oh, okay.
It was on Prime a few years ago.
Oh, okay. That movie is way better than it has any right to be because it's a terrible idea.
So Deadpool 2, I don't feel confident in saying, because I watched a cam of it, obviously. I don't feel confident saying like, oh, I have a true opinion. I enjoyed watching it. I need to see it again in better quality. Mm-hmm. I was thinking, you guys give your opinions, and then I have an interesting question for you regarding the future of Deadpool.
So there's a couple of really fun cameos. I don't know if you picked up on these, Ken.
Such as
Vanisher, Beast. I popped for Beast.
Yeah, the Vanisher was Brad Pitt.
Right, and then the two did you notice the two rednecks?
Yeah, Matt Damon and Alan Tudyk were in this movie
himself. Yeah,
which I didn't notice until I thought back on it, but that was a pretty great cameo. And then the whole that was one of the other funniest lines in the movie where Deadpool's like, "Oh, they gotta just throw us a bone and like have more than just there's nobody ever around this place." Then all of a sudden, the entire main cast of Dark Phoenix is in that room, and Beast just gets up and closes the door.
That's great. Do you guys know who voiced Juggernaut?
It was Ryan Reynolds. Yeah,
it was Ryan Reynolds. What? I couldn't even tell. Somebody told me that, and I was like, "What?"
They modulated his voice down a little bit.
Oh, okay.
I am so glad they didn't attempt the same thing they did in.
I'm the Juggernaut, bitch.
Yeah.
Is that what you're talking
Fucking
about?
Vinny Jones.
It was a funny YouTube video.
It's still funny. Watch it.
It's so because did the video?
It holds up.
You talk about the cartoon where they dubbed over the cartoon characters,
the animated series. Yeah.
Yeah, did that predate X3? Was X3?
Oh yeah, no, yeah. That was there because of the popularity.
Fan service.
Yeah, that was there because of the popularity of the. I don't even think YouTube existed at the time. If it did, it was in its very early stages.
You're right. I think it might have been like an E-Bombs World video or something.
Yeah,
probably. But yeah, so X3 was a reference to that video.
Yes.
That is such a
shut the fuck up, Charles.
Shut the fuck up, Charles. Thing to do. Shut the fuck, Charles.
Yeah, I love that shit so much.
It's a funny video.
Okay, so we pretty much covered Deadpool 2, haven't we? Is there anything else we need to cover?
There's a few more things. I know I had to leave for a second, but his arc, I thought that the whole the ending where Deadpool jumps in front of Cable's bullet and Tomorrow is the song Tomorrow from Annie is playing was one of the most emotionally confusing scenes I've seen in a very long time.
Mm-hmm. Serial Mom ruined that song for me. Not in a bad way. Ruined in a good way.
I just think that like you get this very minimal kind of like soft-spoken version of Tomorrow. And like it's kind of a scene that's kind of funny, but it's also an emotional scene. It's an emotional song, but it's a song that has literally no bearing.
No. You're completely wrong here. I don't know if you noticed, but that song is playing faintly every time Cable remembers the death of his wife and daughter.
Yeah, no, it is.
Okay, so I mean, it's not like it wasn't set up.
But in the context of Deadpool's motivation for saving Fire Fist, it doesn't really make any sense.
I do want to add something. Speaking of music in this movie, the weirdest thing friggin' ever happened to me. The morning before I saw Deadpool, I was doing some walking and I was looking for some music to put on my iPod, and I was really in the mood for some really 80s-tastic like pop stuff. So I was like, you know what? I've never heard Aha's album.
Really?
But I've heard the songs, of course, a song here and there, but I've never heard the full album that they put out. That with Take on Me and stuff.
It is toxically 80s.
Yeah. Oh, it is for sure.
It's like you are in danger of overdosing.
Oh, I totally 80s. And I totally did. And here's but here's the thing. Take on Me is featured not just once but twice in the song, and once in a prominently morose remake, and which is another comment on that. That's a thing that happens in movies like this.
Yeah, it's the MTV Unplugged version that plays during the reunion scene.
Right. And it's, but, just the weirdest thing, that's like the song that I hadn't heard in a long time, and I decided, it kind of reminds me of how last year there was like 10 friggin' movies that used John Denver songs for some reason.
Yeah, that was weird, especially Country Road.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Take Me Home, Country Roads was using a bunch of them, but then like Free Fire used a couple John Denver songs, and yeah. And anyway, the
Tomorrow was just, again, I thought it was a good version. It was a very good scene. It was just kind of like so ridiculous. And that from that point on, the movie really did this whole mix of sadness. It was an emotional ending, but then Deadpool's death scene, and it's like 2 or 3 different fake outs where he's about to die, and the light goes out of his eyes, and he's like, "Oh, it's so hard to leave. I just love you guys." And it's so fucking dumb, but this movie owns it so well. And did you notice during the Juggernaut scene, like the chorus in the background? It's not just a generic chorus like in Star Wars or whatever. The chorus is literally singing "Holy shit balls, holy shit, the Juggernaut."
Yes. That I found hilarious. Yeah, it was...
Which I didn't notice it until about half of the scene. I was like, wait a second, they're actually singing words. And then I when the headmaster's running down the halls, that's when I heard it. I was like, oh my god, they're actually singing "Holy shit balls." I'll need to rewatch it again, because there are a bunch of those little details, like underneath the floorboards of Blind Al's apartment, beneath the cocaine, there's a book labeled "Cure for Blindness." And, at one point I read, I didn't see this, but at one point Deadpool was wearing a Taylor Swift t-shirt. It's just packed with so much visual humor. And I also thought that some of the random gags were a little more on brand than the last movie, if that makes sense. Like, it was more comic book based humor than it was just random pop culture stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think my favorite line in the whole movie was when they put the gadget, the call that suppresses mutant powers on them. And Deadpool's like, "Without my powers, I'm just raw, unbridled cancer. Give me a bow and arrow and I'm Hawkeye." I was like, wow, that is unnecessarily savage, but that's so great that this movie is not afraid to shit on Hawkeye.
Well, I mean, Hawkeye is... the thing about Hawkeye is even Hawkeye shits on Hawkeye. There's the line in Avengers, the second Avengers film, where he's like, I've got a bow and arrow. None of this makes sense.
I fucking love that he calls Josh Brolin Thanos.
Yes. Yeah. And it's funny, Josh Brolin, I get the sense that Josh Brolin may not have actually had a lot of fun making the movie, but he enjoys, like, the people that he was working with.
I thought you were going to say he enjoys the paycheck.
Well, yeah, well, that's
that
true,
too. I think Josh Brolin just has that stoicness.
Well, I heard him interviewed on Mark Maron's podcast, and he made it pretty clear that this kind of movie, like superhero movies, are not even something he's particularly interested in. But he did say he has a lot of fun, like, on the set. But he said it a few times to the point where it's like, to me, he's pretty much saying that, this isn't his thing. He's just, he's in it to win it. But and in this movie, I kind of felt it felt, unlike Thanos, it felt like he really just didn't have much motivation to do anything particularly impressive. I don't know.
That's not a great comparison, only because Thanos is stop motion capture.
Well, but Thanos is a character with motivation, and
right.
Really, the motivation is so thin, paper thin for Cable. It's, I mean, of course, it's necessary from a perspective of it being that generic Terminator kind of thing, but I don't know.
The last joke I want to point out Oh, first of all, first before I do that, kudos to the kid played Firefist who was in Hunt for the Wilder People, whose name I can't remember. I love that actor. He is so great at delivering lines like this little shitty kid, but he's so hard to hate.
Yeah, I agree with you. Where I found him very likable, despite the fact that he plays a very flawed kid.
Yeah. So one of the jokes that I thought was brilliant is that Deadpool and Cable are stepping out of the cab, and Deadpool makes this really horrible, insensitive joke about Cable's teddy bear that he carries. He's like, it's not covered in I don't know what he says, like it's covered in the blood of my daughter. And
yeah.
And then Deadpool's like, oh, if I could just go back in time and take back what I just said. And then when they use Cable's device, it goes back to the point right before that line, and he still makes a really horrible, insensitive joke about the teddy bear.
I didn't think about that, but you're right.
Yeah, that's good.
It's like the very next line after they go back in time is Deadpool saying something really insensitive about that teddy bear again.
He says, I believe the line is like, "What's that homeless person bear with all the dirt on it?"
The dirty hobo bear, or something.
Dirty,
like that.
yeah. That's it.
So yes, I thought again. I did not enjoy the first Deadpool as much after seeing it. Time will tell if the second one will hold up as well under second viewings. I feel like it might, given a better storyline and some humor that's a little less current and a little more topical in a good way.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm hoping that it does, because I had a good time with it, and even if I don't enjoy it afterwards, I'm glad that I had the time with it that I had, because I really enjoyed that first viewing.
The most surprising thing to me about Deadpool 2 is that the idea of Deadpool as a character, breaking the shit out of the fourth wall, cracking jokes, like he in the first movies, especially, the only person he cared about was the girl. So this movie, he kind of learns to have some humanity about him.
Yeah.
Which is interesting, because he definitely comes from a very low point, because he straight up murders the one guy.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Now, granted, the guy was, supposedly a pedophile, but I get the feeling, like something that I heard someone mention is, you know how he makes the assumption that all those guys are pedophiles. Someone pointed out, Deadpool's the kind of person who might just use that as an excuse to, so that he can just do some murder, regardless of whether that's actually true or not. It makes a lot of sense.
I thought at one point Deadpool did have a no women or children rule as far as killing
in the comics.
Well, in the first movie, before he becomes the super powered person, that's his rule as like a mercenary.
Mm-hmm.
For hire.
Okay, that's right.
Yeah,
I need to rewatch the first one.
Yep. Well, anyway, so I think that pretty much covers Deadpool.
Let's talk. I want to pose this to both of you. This is not a "is it possible" question. This is a "how do you do this" question. How do you integrate Deadpool into the MCU under a PG-13 rating without watering down the character?
You don't.
So somebody online had a pair of great ideas.
Mm-hmm.
And both of them revolve around Deadpool being aware of the fact that he's in a PG-13 movie and waiting for his perfect opportunity to use the F-bomb. The one F-bomb.
That's great. Yeah, you definitely play that up. I'm sorry.
That goes sure, yeah. And that goes in one of two directions. Either A, he messes up and he accidentally he's like fuck, he yells at once and he realizes that he wasted his one F-bomb and is really upset. And second scenario is another character gets beaten to the punch and uses the F-bomb first, and he gets really upset at that character.
I was going to say, yeah, like maybe you have somebody in the background, like a rock falls on their foot or something, and they yell out fuck, and then he berates them with like censor bleeps.
Yeah, censor bleeps, or like he even or schools them on the art of using a tasteful F-bomb.
See, I don't like your mentality here, Ken. I think this can be done. It's super fucking tricky, which is why I brought it up, but I think that this can be done somehow. Regardless of how well I think it's pulled off, fans are probably going to bitch. but whatever. I think this is a thing you can do. The real challenge, I think, is not having him just be a cameo in like an Avengers movie, like just a one-off scene, like actually having him there for the long run. It's not going to be easy. Am I wrong? Am I making some points here?
No, you're making some good points. I mean, if I'm being honest, I hope that this merger does not go through and Fox remains its own individual entity.
I want to see Ryan Reynolds in the MCU.
That'd be cool, but I would prefer that more of like a cross promotion like Spider-Man and MCU. Like Fox and Disney do not need to merge. It's a monopoly. I don't need to get into the politics of it and the business side of it. It's too much of a monopoly. Disney does not need to control the entire fucking world when it comes to movies.
But they own the rights now, don't they? They got the Fantastic Four and X-Men rights back.
No, not officially. Once the merger goes through, they will.
Oh.
The Fox merger is still pending, A, on Comcast offer, and B, on the FTC ruling that it's not a monopoly.
Now that is news to me. I did not know that. Which is also really bums me out, because why does Fox have the Fantastic Four rights? You do nothing with them.
Well, that was actually way back in the day. Marvel as
I know how they acquired them. I'm just saying, like, you guys have done jack shit. Like, Kevin Feige could make a fucking great Fantastic Four movie in his sleep.
One thing to remember, by the way, is Fox isn't the only people with the rights. What is the name of that film company? The
Disney?
Same guy who's owned it since the Roger Corman Fantastic Four. He still maintains the rights, and so every 10 years or so.
How old is he? Is he going to die soon?
No, it wasn't. Hold on.
Hammer.
Kenan Thompson.
I want to say Constantine Films.
It was Kel Mitchell. That's the guy.
Anyway, while you look for that, Ken, the reason that Fantastic sucked so bad is because if Fox doesn't make a Fantastic Four movie every X number of years, the rights revert back to Marvel. So they just get out this fuck-ass movie every few years just to hold on to the rights to the characters.
So they don't give a shit.
Back on topic. I want to hear Hawk. I'm gonna give you a challenge. Pitch me, if you were in charge, how would you incorporate Deadpool into, let's say, Infinity War 2, whatever the sequel to that is going to be called? I'm putting you on the spot here. I know. Again, I think
I would say that I would probably have it as Deadpool is walking around reading the Infinity War comic and pointing out the inaccuracies in the movie so far. And Tony Stark is really mad at him, and Doctor Strange explains that that's not how things are, and they eventually somehow convince Deadpool to join them in the fight. Deadpool spends a long time waiting for his F-bomb. He gets killed before he gets to use it. And then
Constantine Film is right.
He wakes up in the very ending. What?
It is Constantine Film.
Okay. He wakes up at the very end of the movie, and he's about to use his F-bomb, and then the movie cuts away before he gets to use it.
Oh my God, yes. That's really great. And then he could come back after that, like just hype as shit to say the F word.
Yes.
That's great. See, I told you it's not impossible. A lot of people are acting like it's completely just you would water down the character too much. You would water down the character too much, but I think it's doable. Like it's a very fine line to tread, but it is possible.
Yes.
I just don't think it's something that.
Although I think that something with Deadpool in Marvel would have to something to do. Maybe Deadpool isn't quite so. His character wouldn't revolve around using the F-bomb because he, of course, being Deadpool, would know full well that he's in a Disney movie and he has to respect Disney's wishes.
That's good. Yeah. As far as what Ken is saying, I think Hawk and I, being guys that have read like big crossover event Marvel books, like the Zombies series or Civil War or whatever, like when Deadpool pops up in those, it's always you know, he does his Deadpool shtick, and it's fun. It's a fun little departure from the seriousness.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, well, we'll go ahead and move on then, because we've got 2 more movies we need to cover.
Oh, I thought we were done. Shit.
No.
Ooh, I'm about to lay some fucking hate down.
Fahrenheit 451, the latest HBO adaptation of Ray Bradbury's triumphant novel.
But not a series.
Yeah, it's a movie.
Yeah, it's not. It's a movie. It's not a mini series. I've spoken to 3 different people who thought it was a series.
Yeah, no, it's just a movie.
Right. That's why I point that out, because it's not a movie, which ties into something that I'll mention later on. It's a 100-minute movie based on a book that could easily work as a 6 or 8-part miniseries.
Do you think it would have benefited from being fleshed out to that length?
Yeah, it would have benefited from having a different team of writers and actors and producers and director and crew.
So just every single variable out the window.
Yeah.
So first of all, I'm going to say that I am of the opinion that Fahrenheit 451 is one of those books that really just should not be a movie. Part of the problem with it is that conceptually, it's one of those things that is more believable on page than it would be if you actually tried to visualize it for audiences. And part of the problem is the concept is inherently very stylized. The concept is it's set in a future society that has made the determination that books are evil. Books are basically only built to spread lies. And society has, at the point that the book picks up, society has decided that they not only are books evil, but they just need to destroy them. The only thing that people should be able to take in is what is able to be taught to them through the media that's created by the centralized government that the story takes place in.
I am pro burning the Bible.
Well, so anyway, this movie tries to modernize that concept, which admittedly, if you're going to adapt Fahrenheit 451, you do have to modernize it because it's a dated story in a lot of ways. There's elements in it that, seen through modern contexts, you would just say, why don't they do this or why don't they do that? And there's some interesting ideas in this movie that just don't work.
Right.
So one of the things they try to do to modernize it is, besides protecting books, you have these the people who are trying to keep books from being burned are also uploading it to the internet. And I kind of like that they refer to that as graffiti. I thought that was an interesting twist of language that for them to refer to it. But what doesn't work about it is that the quote internet, as seen in this movie, is this. It's really more of an intranet where the people who live in this country have access to a very restrictive. It's not unlike what they have in China, where they just closely guard everything that people are allowed to see and take in.
Right.
And Michael B. Jordan plays Guy Montag, the main character in the story, as he goes from being a fireman, who, in the context of Fahrenheit 451, Bill, if you're not, you haven't read the book, have you?
I have not read the book.
Okay.
I haven't read the book. I'm not familiar with the author, nothing like that.
So the concept of fireman has been changed in this future. A fireman is someone who burns books. And they've created this sort of mystique around the concept of firemen, and they're sort of seen as they're kind of treated like police officers in a way, rather than firefighters. And if they find that if someone finds books in your house, you get arrested, and they burn the books, and then they burn your house down.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna let you go. I'm gonna take the reins off, Hawk. Hate on this movie.
So first of all, this movie appears to have been written and directed by people who know of a story about a dystopian society where books are burned, and that's all they know about that story.
Yeah.
Because this movie takes some really frustrating and really poorly thought out liberties with the story. So first of all, one of the most important things about the original story to me was that Guy is married with his wife, who his wife at one point early on in the story has a drug overdose, and the EMTs come and they pump her stomach, and when she wakes up the next morning, she believes that whole thing was just part of a she thinks she's hungover because she partied too hard the previous night, and part of and that's part of what wakes Guy up to the fact that he is in this, like, he's like, okay, wait a second, this world is actually kind of fucked up, right? So in this movie, not only does he not have a wife, there's this girl who in a book I believe was his next door neighbor, younger next door neighbor named Clarice. She is now a resistance leader in this film, and his entire thing is she's kind of hot. Let's find out what she has to say. He thinks with dick in this movie.
Yeah.
And it completely removes the agency of Guy's character waking up to the world he's in. Rather than that, he's like, Sophia Boutella is really attractive, so I want to hear what she has to say.
Right.
There's this interesting dynamic of the characters between Montag and B, which was probably the best part of the movie. Michael B. Jordan versus Michael Shannon. Michael Shannon's character Beatty is kind of a father figure to Montag, which I thought was a pretty good dynamic with them as pals and the way they do it. And then also Beatty's character has this a huge amount of nuance. Like, he will stay up all night just writing poetry on pieces of paper, and then in the morning he burns it, which was an interesting part of his character that was not explored enough. And this is why I kind of take fault with the fact that this was not a miniseries, is because they could have explored way more with his character and his own arc in a series.
Like, yeah, I really liked Michael Shannon's performance in this film, and the interesting parts of this movie were mostly associated with him. Mostly because the way his character was depicted is intriguing, in that he is kind of the most unique type of villain, in that he's more woke than a lot of people about books. He knows that books carry knowledge, but he's reasoned himself into what he does. He's able to feel good about what he does.
So he's Dr. Zaius.
Yeah, I guess he knows what happened in the past, and yeah, you're right. You're right. He knows what happened in the past, and he's
nailed it.
Yeah, he's able to conceal the past, and he's able to put that aside, even though he clearly has a fascination for writing and is very knowledgeable of books.
Now, weren't there books in his office? I swear I saw a bookshelf behind him in his office.
I don't remember seeing that. But
they could have been journals of some sort, but there were definitely book spines behind him in the scene where he's writing on his papers early into the movie.
Well, his knowledge of literature is shockingly good for someone who doesn't read books. So he's clearly a well-read person, and he's clearly read more than his share of books. But that said, he's completely dedicated to his task of annihilating books as we know it, which is intriguing. I like that dichotomy of, he knows the power of books and he appreciates their power, but he also wants to destroy that which gives him knowledge.
Because I think part of what was explored in the book is that he has fallen so deep into his role that he can't really escape it. Now he's just kind of on this trajectory that he can't escape from. And again, like this dynamic of his character could have been so good if they explored it more, but it's a fucking hour and 40-minute movie, and there's so much that they have to go over in with these characters, and there's no room for breathing at all in the movie.
This is also a problem in the Truffaut movie. Yes, 1966.
Which I didn't rewatch the movie, but I remember when I first watched it, I found myself maybe a little bit bored.
But it's also a very dull movie.
Yeah, I don't remember much about it, though. I remember being like, I kind of wish I had a better version of this book, and then I had the same reaction last night when I watched this version.
I just don't think that you can really film this story. It doesn't feel like the kind of story that is filmable, really.
I think it is, but they kind of focus on the wrong things in this movie. Again, removing the wife, removing the entire third act of the book, like the whole third act is completely changed.
One of the problems is so much of what happens in the book goes on in Guy Montag's head, his thoughts on things. And I've found that the books that are hardest to translate to film are books that focus on inner monologue.
Which I think that Fahrenheit 451 is a movie that has mass market appeal, but if you got like a really daring auteur to direct a new version of this movie, like maybe not Lars von Trier, but something along that same trajectory, I would totally watch Lars von Trier's Fahrenheit 451.
You know who actually might who might do an interesting job with that would be the what's his name, the director of The Lobster.
Yorgos
Lanthimos.
Yorgos Lanthimos, yeah. That would be good.
I think he might have, yeah. If any director could do it, I think he could. Because one thing Yorgos does is he writes dialogue that is very stylized in its own way, and that's one problem with this movie is the dialogue is just bonkers. They didn't give a shit about writing good dialogue.
Right.
It's just pure exposition. One
thing that I found really, really deeply off-putting is during an opening scene, like there's this there are very obvious parallels to Trump's America in this movie.
Yeah,
like it's so bad. This is like one of the worst lines I've heard in a movie so far this year. Is there during an early scene they take one of the book readers out to the streets and they're gonna like, oh, choose their sentence, and then Michael B. Jordan's like, you gonna let these people take our jobs and steal our taxpayer money? I was like, how does reading books do any of those things? It makes no sense. Like that was a remarkably forced.
Then again, does it make sense even when you're dealing with illegal immigrants? No, it doesn't.
No, not at all.
So I'm just saying it's absurd no matter where you cut it.
Right. That was an awful line, and that was I think at that point in the movie I was like, you know what? Absolutely not. Fuck this movie. And that probably kind of like turned me away from it really hard right at that moment. That was kind of the linchpin of me just like, I don't like this.
Right. No, sir, I don't like it.
Yeah, exactly. I pulled up my Letterboxd review. I won't read the whole thing, but I'm using it as kind of like something to draw off of. The fact that they kind of did away with the nuclear war aspect of the story in the first one, which I still think, even though it's modernized or futurized, the threat of nuclear war would have given the movie a little bit more of an urgency, because they kind of allude to this in the movie, but it's very poorly written out. In the book, the book burning was something that society decided to do. They're like, we don't like these books, we're going to do it. And then the world of this movie feels like a totalitarian government rose up and just kind of smothered society into not being allowed to read books. Even though Michael Shannon does talk about how people started burning books, that felt like oh shit, I almost forgot we have to write this part in the movie about how people don't like books. Like it felt ham-fisted, very, very much of an afterthought. I think it's a lot more interesting how the book kind of hints at this downward trajectory where mass media started smothering free thinking. And then this movie has really none of that. There's also kind of the constant surveillance is supposed to be kind of creepy, but it's like, I mean, not really, because I already know that Facebook collects information. I already know that my cell phone over next to my bed is probably recording everything I say. It's scary, but it's not that scary as the movie's making it.
I will say that the Alexa clone that they use in this, I think made for some interesting commentary. I didn't mind that. The whole thing of him telling it to go dark, and then discovering that no, it's still hearing everything you say. It doesn't matter what I thought that was an interesting scene.
That was an effective scene because he's reading and all of a sudden she starts talking to him. He's like, "I told you to go dark." She's like, "Well, I did. It's just you and me."
Yeah.
Like, that was creepy. But again, that's another one. Again, in a 100-minute movie, that is one more element that is not explored enough.
So on the other hand, I will say if you're looking for a dystopian a dystopian adaptation of a famous piece of literature, definitely check out the John Hurt 1984 adaptation.
Yes, that one's good.
Yeah, that one is a fantastic movie, and it actually nails the spirit of the book to the T. So, and that's a book that also would be very difficult to film, and they found a way to make it work.
Yes.
So we'll go ahead and move on because it's time to end our recording with probably one of the most fun bad movies I've seen in recent memory, which is Bad Samaritan.
Yes. Yes.
So
this is a sequel to Bad Santa where he has to do community service, right?
No. So Bad Samaritan is a horror, psychological horror thriller movie that is basically the movie opens up with this guy who's working as a valet at a restaurant and by day and robbing the people who the cars of the people who he valets with, and he's basically a prick. The star of this movie is a horrible human being, which is
I wouldn't say horrible. He's a lost soul.
He robs people and he's an asshole. He lies to everyone he knows. More than a lost soul, he's just a total prick.
Yeah,
and an unlikable character too.
I think I wouldn't go so far as saying all of that. He's a bad person, but I think I don't know. It's hard. That's what this is. What's weird about this movie. It's from the director of Geostorm. First of all,
yes.
Oh, that's your favorite movie?
Yeah, no, actually, no. Hurricane Heist is my favorite movie.
Bad Samaritan is from the director of Geostorm, and Dean Devlin is the producer of so many huge blockbuster movies. And yet, for his follow-up to Geostorm, he made this tiny little thriller. And the plot of this movie, Bill, is so this guy's he's kind of a dick, and while robbing the house of while attempting to rob the house of someone, he discovers that he chose to rob the wrong house. He chose to rob the house of a guy who keeps a girl tied down in a room and with some crazy fucked up like S&M gear. And you're like, what's going on here?
Well, hold on. His MO is that he's a valet. And while his customer is dining, he uses their GPS to go to that person's house and rob them while the person is eating dinner at the restaurant.
Right. And so this guy pulls up, and who just manages to be an even bigger dick than he is, David Tennant. And David Tennant,
American accent,
yeah, with an American accent, throws his keys to this guy, and he says, "Don't put a scratch on it."
Well, the guy's like, "Oh, nice car, dude," and he's like, "Yeah, don't fucking touch it."
Yeah. So anyway, he decides to rob the house, and he finds this girl chained up in this room. And the first thing you think is he like raping this girl? Is this like this fucked up sex thing? And they never fully address whether it's a sexual thing, but the key is that David Tennant's character has this thing about like breaking horses, and rather than breaking horses, he's decided to break people. And
because when he was a kid, he was trying to break this horse and ended up killing it.
Yeah.
And for some reason, this is a traumatic memory that translates to his desire to break humans. I don't think it's sexual. He just likes exerting control.
And so, like, his big quote that he uses a few times in this movie is, "I will correct you."
Yeah. Also, no breakfast.
Yeah, anyone who does something that displeases him, he has this urge to correct them, and to do so in basically using corporal punishment. And it is it's fucked up, but it's also really corny the way it's staged. This very much has Girl Next Door levels of ludicrous moments that just defy logic and yet are so easy to appreciate and laugh at.
Do you mean Boy Next Door? Because Girl Next Door is that porno thing.
Oh,
the girl's a porn star.
Boy
that's
Next Door.
the teen sex comedy.
Yeah, sorry, Boy Next Door.
I remember that it came out, the Girl Next Door, and they like revealed the whole plot in the trailer, and I was like, well, I don't need to see this.
That movie was like, oh, that girl from 24 is kind of hot. Let's make a sex comedy once she turns 18.
Well, it could have been worse. I could have said The Other Sister.
Bad Samaritan is trash, and it's great.
Mm-hmm. Endless
Like,
trash.
When I first saw the trailer, I was like, oh, from the director of Geostorm. God. Actually, they didn't show it in the trailer, obviously. No trailer would say from the director of Geostorm. From the acclaimed visionary director of Geostorm and the producer of The Day After Tomorrow in 2012. But when I saw the trailer, I was like, oh, this looks kind of trashy. And then at the end is like directed by Dean Devlin, like very subtly for a half second. Like, oh shit, it's Dean Devlin. Then Ken, you saw it and you gave me your seal of approval, and you, knowing me better than almost anybody else in terms of what I'll actually enjoy, you very specifically said that I would love this. And at that point I was fully on board, and you were absolutely correct.
Yeah, this is the exact type of garbage that you love, and
Yes.
it's just. And by the way, it's the exact type of garbage in this case. Not all cases, we don't always agree, but this is the exact type of garbage that I love too.
Yes, it's the exact type of garbage that we can love together. It's just like this movie is so much of everything. It's one of my Bill. Do you care about spoilers?
Not for this.
Okay, so spoilers for anybody listening. When this movie really kind of like, it's been going for a while, but my favorite scene in the whole movie is that David Tennant's character has this like mountain house with a jail cell.
Mm-hmm.
Where he keeps his girl locked up. And, at one point, as a side note, at one point she looks at the wall and a previous victim, had used chalk to do tally marks of her days in the cell and then wrote, "Help me." Like, that's really going to fucking do anything. It was supposed to be a dramatic moment. But the part that I laughed at is that David Tennant is up in his mountain house with a girl, and he's using his high-tech cameras to watch this main character kid down in his regular rich house. And he like turns on all the appliances, like, ooh, spooky, the coffee maker's brewing, the TV's on, and the lights are on. And then the kid learns that there's the David Tennant's character has put a bomb in the oven set to explode in like 20 seconds. So David Tennant blows up his own house just to kill this kid.
Yeah. Yeah, it's...
The one legitimate jump scare in the movie for me was when David Tennant's character attacks the main character's girlfriend.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like, Halloween, all of a sudden, like, blam! He runs out of nowhere, like, slams her head against the wall and, like, punches her a few times and, like, throws her over a balcony. It's like, Jesus Christ, that is excessive.
It was a violent fucking scene. And one thing I really like about this is, so the main character, who I've mentioned, is not a great person. He lies to his girlfriend about what he does, and his girlfriend, he wants to make it up to her, so he invites her to this meeting where they're going to kind of talk things over. And on her way over to do that, that's where David Tennant attacks the girlfriend and beats the fuck out of her to the point where she's basically dead. I'm surprised that she wasn't just dead, but she's hospitalized. She's plugged into a bunch of machines, and the kid comes to visit her in the hospital and try to explain things, and you see her write something down on a piece of paper, and all it says is "go away."
So that's one of the things, as well as the fact that after this kid, he sees the girl chained up in David Tennant's house, and he could very easily walk away and be fine, but he is ready to face jail time, and he's ready to lose everything to save this girl because he feels like that's something that he has to do. That's why earlier I was hesitant at calling him a huge piece of shit, like, because I think that's why I called him a lost soul. Like, he's doing what he can to make ends meet. He kind of went down the wrong path with his friend that's making him do these criminal activities, but he's a good-hearted person at his core. Like, he wants to save this girl. He wants to do right by his girlfriend. And I liked that he really wanted to save this girl no matter what it took. And B, I liked the finality of his girlfriend saying go away. Like, oh, he's not redeeming himself. He is fucked up and he has lost her forever.
Right.
And that's something that movies don't do. Like, any other movie would have been like at the very end, an epilogue scene shows them back together and she's okay with him again for no reason. But that's the last scene you see her in. He's done.
Yeah.
And I liked how this movie actually had real consequences.
Yeah, I would completely agree with you there. So
the FBI character was kind of stupid.
Kind of stupid?
It's really dumb. It was a total afterthought.
So,
do you have anything to add to that?
No,
the FBI stuff.
The FBI stuff was it felt like a different movie being honest.
That was actually one thing that really frustrated me, is that this kid goes to like the police and everybody else, and they're like, yeah, you know what, fuck off. And then it actually led to some pretty good intense moments where the police officer goes to David Tennant's house and they have this conversation. That's what's weird, is that this is a very well-made bad movie. It's shot pretty good. Like, I really think that disaster porn is not Dean Devlin's forte. If he keeps making these low budget violent thrillers, I think he'll really find himself in his wheelhouse. But unfortunately, Bad Samaritan was like the 13th worst wide opening for a movie ever, so he might have trouble finding work as a director, which saddens me.
He's been living in Roland Emmerich's shadow for 2 decades, 3 decades now.
Yeah.
But did anybody know his name until he directed Geostorm?
I knew his name as a co-writer on at least Godzilla. Did he work on Independence Day?
Yeah. I think so.
Okay, so yeah, I knew his name from shit like that, but
I've known his name for a while as a producer.
I mean, like, as a producer, it's fine. I just think that with Bad Samaritan, he's kind of... I think Bad Samaritan feels like the beginning of his own flavor of film that I would really very much like to see more of. But I'm worried that the lack of response to his work is going to kind of hurt his future, which, again, makes me very sad, because I thoroughly enjoyed Bad Samaritan, not only as trash, but as being genuinely entertaining. It's dumb, but everybody made out with a very clear vision of the kind of movie they wanted to make.
Yeah, that's true. A vision of garbage.
But, I mean, did you not love it? Did you not have a total blast watching it?
Yes, I laughed. I smiled through the whole thing. And I had the theater completely to myself, so I got to shout cat calls at the movie. I was like, no, bullshit! Things like that.
I had like maybe 5 other people in my auditorium, and we all had around the same level of fun as I did.
Yeah.
So that's almost... I love when that happens, when I get just a small handful of people that are having that are able to laugh at the movie as much as I did. Like, it reminds me back, one of my best theater going experiences of all time was Winter's Tale, because 3 rows down from me was a couple in their 60s who were making even more fun of the movie than I was.
Nice.
Like, the part where he falls down, and there's the flying horse that carries him away.
Mm-hmm.
And this old guy was like, what the fuck, a flying horse? And this couple was devouring this movie. And I love when I get a small auditorium with maybe a handful of people that can all have the same level of fun as I had. And I had that with Bad Samaritan. And that's the kind of experience that I put above everything else.
Mm-hmm.
So I hope I get more of those, especially from Devlin, because I as much as Geostorm was not a good movie that I had fun with, and then later on was like, no, that was really terrible. With Bad Samaritan, I can safely say that that's some of the most fun I've had in the theaters so far this year.
All right. So with that said, there's really only one major new release next week, which is Solo.
A Star Wars Han Solo film.
Releasing Solo.
Red Han Solo Cup.
Starring Childish Gambino, because I'm sure a lot of people are just going to see it because Donald Glover's in it.
I like how Donald Glover is the guy doing the Millennium Falcon tour videos, because everyone's like, oh, that's not Harrison Ford. Who's this fucking kid? And like, oh, Donald Glover, I like him. He's in Community. So
Yeah,
he's been dominating all the marketing because
his meme game is hot right now with This Is America music video that he came out with.
Oh, right.
People are memeing the shit out of that.
Not to mention that the response to Glover in the Solo trailers has been the one universally positive reaction to the trailer in general.
Movie Bob came out with his review and he said he liked it and it was good, but I don't know how you felt about The Last Jedi, Hawk. I know Ken wasn't in love with it, but he liked that as well. So I don't know.
My one sentence review of The Last Jedi is it is a very flawed and confused movie with a handful of very cool moments.
Okay.
I'll even agree with that.
Mm-hmm.
And then my friend kind of expounded on that by saying that those cool moments don't even really work well in the context of the movie.
Yeah.
For me, this is a total, it's one of those situations. I want to know what the Phil Lord, Chris Miller product of this would have been, because...
And we will never know.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, Disney.
If they ever want to work in film again, they are going to shut their fucking mouth.
Oh, they're fine. They're going to be all right.
They're getting executive producer credits on the film.
Out of necessity or just
out of contractual obligation.
The way that they phrased it is that they actually opted to not get co-director credits and said, like, we're only going to take executive producer credits on this film, and then Ron Howard is going to be the sole directorial credit for it.
I need to rewatch the Red Letter Media Mike and Rich predict video for Solo, because once I rewatch it, if there are things that they predicted correctly, I'm probably going to laugh.
Oh, I'm sure that there are.
Definitely. Yeah. I mean, the main consensus I've been hearing is that, like, it's fine. It's predictable, but it's not bad.
Right. But there's always that high voice. It's not bad.
Exactly. Like
ATSTs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Remember these?
Well, that's the thing, is that I really hope that's not what it ends up being. I don't know.
But I think people grade Star Wars movies on a curve anyway, so.
I didn't. Rogue One, for me, just I didn't care about any of the new characters.
I liked Rogue One.
Yeah, that's the thing. Hate on Rogue One all you want. I thought that Rogue One was at its very basic level, it was an entertaining movie that, honestly, on rewatching, it holds up fairly well. There's some moments in it that are just not the best choices. I still maintain that Forrest Whitaker dies for no goddamn reason whatsoever.
Yeah, he's going like, Storm is beautiful.
Yeah, it's like, you could have gone with them, I mean,
he'd been slow, but they would have figured it out.
Seriously, and just stuff like that. They're little moments like that.
I didn't hate Rogue One. I just felt like, why am I watching this?
Yeah,
did we need Rogue One?
No,
probably not. But it's a fun movie. It's entertaining. Maybe not fun. It's entertaining.
Yeah. It's not like, I don't have the level of hatred, I guess, is the word, like, for lack of a better term, hatred that Red Letter Media.
So Rogue One is, here's the thing for me. For Rogue One is a movie that when I saw it, I still felt excited about Star Wars after it was over. I said, you know what? That's cool. They had some ideas, and this is a spin-off series, so it's it doesn't have to be perfect. perfect. It's just them kind of doing a fan fiction story. That's fine. And then
Right.
the next Star Wars movie came out and thoroughly disappointed me in a lot of ways. And
I like The Last Jedi more than Rogue One.
I
wish Bill A was here to back me up. Jesus Christ. He liked it.
The Last Jedi just does not work as a movie, and it shits on so much of what makes Star Wars that it feels counterintuitive, and it's going out of.
It was an intentional dismantling of The Force Awakens, and
I was gonna say, yeah, like
what it literally was we set up the dominoes and. Fuck it, we're not even going to knock the dominoes down. We're just going to throw away the domino set.
Rian Johnson just they set the dominoes and Rian Johnson tips the table over.
And now admittedly, J.J. Abrams did create The Force Awakens, so maybe they asked J.J. Abrams, so what's your plan for the rest of the Star Wars series? Like if you were to do it. And
like he said with Lost.
Yeah, I have no idea.
No, that's literally what it was. Like so it is a fact that The Force Awakens was developed with no game plan for the rest of the franchise.
Which, admittedly, I get why they would want to, here's the thing. Rather than retconning the entire movie, that's what this movie was. The Last Jedi was retconning it, basically. Rather than doing that, come up with a way to make what he set up work, because I think there's places you could have gone.
Yeah.
I like things in The Last Jedi that I did like. I think killing Snoke off was a good idea.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think the whole thing about the Jedi Order, of Luke just not being particularly that good of a Jedi Knight.
I
kind of thought that was interesting.
It's not bad.
Yeah,
this could be a.
But I would have liked to see that. I would have liked to see that come to a conclusion in the third movie instead of this one.
And the main things that didn't work about Last Jedi were just you have about a solid 40 minutes of the movie that are absolutely pointless to the story. And do nothing to further it, and then you have weird moments like Princess Leia floating in just they couldn't have found a better way to make it look like she was floating.
That was so fucking dumb. I hated that part so much.
Yeah, God. And really, I you know what? I'm gonna just stop here because I can talk for another half hour about that movie, and
I need to rewatch it. That's what I was about to say. Is that it's sort of a Deadpool situation. I only saw it the one time in the theater. I have not rewatched it since it's come out.
See, I saw it twice in theaters. I wanted to give it that second viewing, and I did. And I saw it the second time, and it reminds me of when I saw Star Trek Into Darkness the second time. The first time.
Oh shit! So
The first time hold on, let me say this. The first time I saw Into Darkness, I didn't mind it all that much.
Well, that's the thing. That's why I was talking, is because when me and Bill A reviewed that, we are like so positive. It's almost embarrassing to go back and listen to.
Yeah, but then I saw it a second time, and it was weird. It was like everything that I saw that I liked about it, it was still there, but on watching a second time, I realized how surface level it all was.
Yeah, well, comparing it to Into Darkness is kind of a low blow, but I understand what you're saying. I understand completely where you're coming from. I understand what you're saying. The Last Jedi is superior to Star Trek Into Darkness.
You know what? I'll even go ahead and give you that. But it's the same feeling I had, where I felt just so distraught. I was actively hating The Last Jedi by the end of the second viewing. I was actively hating it.
Okay, maybe that'll happen to me. I need to watch it again. I should watch it again. Okay.
All right. Well, we'll see Solo. We'll talk about Solo next week, and we gotta go. So, see ya.
Good night, everybody.
Bye.